yourself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wright. It is Friday night. It is the three Amigos and Ian, and we've got Mitch, Steve Hasty and Ian Mearns, who is available this week to join us and talk through the next 2 hours about Newcastle United. And if, as always, the people in the chat keep me right about the level of my microphone, I might end up shouting tonight because I'm deaf in one ear. So if you've got any old wives' tales which can help us cure this blocked ear, it's clearly waxed, and help us out. Olive oil was the last thing I was told, so olive oil into the ear tends to sort it out. Go on, Ian. You got some advice?
No, that's a definite no. It's a definite no. It's bad for you. That
is it?
It's like an old remedy, oft used, but actually definitely not recommended in terms of it because it's getting infection in your ear. I definitely couldn't recommend that.
Does it mix with a sawdust?
Probably.
Now, before we came on air, you had one of those Ian dad jokes. What was it?
Well, what it was is Stevie went to see the doctor this afternoon, and he says, "Doctor," he says, "I've got a problem," and he says, "Look, can I just help you, Mr. Wraith? You seem to have custard and jelly in one ear, and some biscuits." And some cream in the other ear. He says, and Steve said, "I'm sorry, you'll have to speak up. I'm a trifle deaf."
Ta-da! Well done, mate. Fantastic. That's brilliant, man. Brilliant. Well worked. There you go, everybody. Everybody wanted a dad joke last week and the week before. We didn't get one last week. We didn't get one the week before. We've got one tonight. Perfect start of the weekend. And let's hope the perfect start of the weekend continues with Fulham getting whopped tonight. I can't see it, but let's hope Leeds do us a favour. Plenty to talk about, lads. And I've got to make an apology as well to Andre, our Toon Stato, who we had our facts and figures from the previous week. I forgot to play his video last week, lads. I was that sick and tired of Newcastle United that I actually forgot to play his video. So apologies to Andre. He has done one for tonight. So when we get to 7 o'clock and just before we lose Ian tonight, we'll do our look ahead. We'll start our look ahead to Brighton. We'll get Toon Stato on them. We've got all your usual things that we do on a Friday, though. Toon Lookalike, your Tweet of the Week and Troll of the Week are all ready and primed and ready to go tonight. And as always, we've got Steve Hasty's competition, which is sponsored by qtechshop.co.uk, and he's also chucked an extra one into the chat. I've got to put this up. Bill Molden sent us this today. And I'm not sure, I think it was a cartoon in a newspaper, I think, by is it McLaughlin there? Bruce picks Joe Linton versus Brighton. North facing hardship, and there's the Angel of the North decides to fly off as soon as he sees that Bruce picks Joe Linton versus Brighton. I think that's quite an apt cartoon, probably how a lot of people are feeling. And there's a little addition to the lookalikes as well. Mitch sent us this week.
Yeah. Found in the archives in Texas from 1846. It's the original Three Amigos. And it's uncanny, isn't it, really? It's really uncanny. They used to write a bulletin every Friday about their rodeo team, Nuevo Castillo Unitas. And they used to complain about the manager, Stevos Brusos. And so, it's funny how history repeats itself, isn't it?
I tell you what, I like the fact that one of them looks like Mitch, one of them looks uncannily like Steve, and the other one is clearly not me, but looks like me. So, yeah, and very good that.
Clearly not photoshopped at all.
Clearly not photoshopped at all. John from Jab would be very, very proud of you with that.
I have to say, though, they both look great in bowler hats, mate.
They both look great in bowler hats, yeah. You're definitely right there. And I think the saying of the week, we don't have a special section for saying of the week, but I think the saying of the week has got to go to John Gibson last night. Absolutely brilliant. Had everybody howling. And, of course, our friends at QTech were quick to get a little picture out. Wake up and smell the manure. John Gibson classic last night. He was on top form with Supermarket, and watch that in the playlist. But yeah, wake up and smell the manure.
Gibbo's pure gold when he gets on form like that. He really is.
He was flying last night, absolutely flying. But yeah, good stuff as always. And as I said, plenty to talk about tonight. Let's start with the comments as we always do. Chris Smart says, I only want what's best for the club, which is what Steve Bruce said today. He's seen us slip from what, 11th, safely mid-table to this mess. Surely enough is enough. If we lose this weekend, he has to go. Ian, it was a question that was asked to Malcolm last night and to Gibbo, and everyone feels like that. You know, that if we lose against Brighton, it's got to be the end. But he's hanging on by his fingertips, and I've got to be honest, I still think he'll be here, win, lose or draw.
Well, I'm afraid to say that I think I've come to the conclusion that the fact that he's still there is down to the fact that we've actually got an owner who actually doesn't give a toss. He doesn't give a toss where the club finishes, whether we get relegated or whether we stay up. And because he doesn't give a toss, he'll not make a decision. And therefore we're stuck with him probably now for the duration. You know, I mean, you know, I had this theory that, you know, the new coach had been brought in to be the acting caretaker manager when Bruce was departed. But I think if they're going to get rid of Bruce, they would have done it by now.
Yeah, I agree. Mitch, it's not looking as if he's going to go anywhere anytime soon. And he seems very confident as well, doesn't he? And he's made his point. He's made his point clear again today. I am not going to walk.
He has done it, but today there does seem to be a slightly different air about it for me. And bearing in mind, it certainly seems the behind the scenes is now leaking like a sieve, and there's things coming out from within the club which are interesting to say the least. The latest thing that's being bandied around is that there's a clause in his contract that he can be sacked without the compensation if we slip into the bottom three. I don't know how much truth there is in that, to be honest with you. But he certainly seems quite different today to me in some of the things he's saying. A little less bullish, perhaps. But all along, for me, he's been saying, come on and sack us. You sack me. I'm not going to walk. You sack me. And that's what it kind of smacks of again a little bit. But like I say, there's just something perhaps a little different at the minute, a little less bullish about him. But to say, you know, some of the things he said today are again, poor at best, ill thought at best, insensitive certainly, and utterly unaware of the actual position we are in.
I thought it was one of his better interviews.
Well, there you go.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
Says a huge lot, doesn't
it? Mitch, you know, this clause in his contract, is it a sanity clause?
Because
there ain't no sanity clause.
See, with this definitely, I thought you were saying sanitary. I thought you said sanitary. I wasn't sure there. Like, it's you've got to be careful. Be very careful what you say tonight, lads.
It's an old Marx Brothers joke. It's an old Marx Brothers joke. We all know there ain't no sanity clause, you know.
If it's a sanitary clause, it's a load of shite, which is what we're witnessing on the pitch at the minute.
That's how he's smelling the manure.
That's it. Wake up and smell the manure, Bruce. Steve Hasty, what's your thoughts?
I had some interesting thoughts today about him, some interesting comments. You know what? You go back to him taking the job, and from the moment he took the job, he was convincing everybody and himself that he was a Geordie. He convinced himself that he knew Newcastle. He was coming back, but he knew it all, and he did nothing to ingratiate himself with fans whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. When in reality, Steve's Close. You got me talking about clauses now. Steve Bruce is a bloke who had been away from Newcastle for 45 years. He returned thinking that the city was exactly the same city as it was when he left, and it wasn't. But he did nothing to try and find out. He did absolutely nothing, and he's living in this sort of perpetual mind that he knows best. Nothing's changed. Everything's as it was. I'm a Geordie. I'm this. I'm that. The city's moved on 45 years since you were living here as a kid, mate. You know, the football club's moved on. Football's moved on. Supporters have moved on. The city looks nothing like it did. You're probably still wondering, thinking that you know, unaware that we even got a metro and stuff like that. And it's just this sort of like,
where's this Dolce Vita?
Yeah, exactly. As somebody said, he'd be walking along Person Street looking for the logo. You know, he's looking for the pram shop across the road and thinks the Handyside Arcade is still here.
Thinks
you know?
Malcolm's still running a shop.
Yeah,
Thinks
exactly.
Stan Seymour Sports is still open.
Yeah, but
I had a poster of you from the cardboard, Stevie.
yeah, but he hasn't. He's in that mindset that he knows best, and he's done nothing. He did nothing to get himself sort of educated in what the new modern city is all about, what the Newcastle fans are all about, and just his sheer cockiness. And he's now failing miserably, and he's wondering why nobody likes him, and he's wondering why he's up against it. And his dinosaur memory of Newcastle is like his dinosaur memory of how football should be played. It's just unbelievably bad. Bill, somebody said to me today, she said, you know what? When you watch him, because he's in denial, he's like one of these blokes, right? Who got married, went on honeymoon, spent a fortnight getting absolutely ratted, and then on his third wedding anniversary, wonders why he's still eating food out of tins and having to heat them up in the microwave because the wife won't cook for him. That's what, and he's like, well, what did I do wrong? You know, he showed no love for his wife. He showed no love for the city. There's nothing there for him, you know, and yet he's like wandering around in this daze. And today's press conference he was dejected. There was something going on. His body language, everything. And you know what? At this stage of the season, what I'm expecting is a buoyant sort of, we're going to get into this. We're all in it. Yes, he could say we're all in this together, but I expect to see that enthusiasm on the touchline. And I would hope that he spent the whole week trying to rub that off on the players. His press conference were depressed before and would have had the squad depressed before they got on the plane, quite frankly, to get down to Brighton. I bet you, if I was a player, if he was my manager and I was a player, the minute I got to the hotel in Brighton, I would lock the door and make sure that I never seen him again. You know, you wouldn't want to sit around and have a meal with him like that, because he's like a dementor. It's like Harry Potter. He's one of the dementors that will bring you down no matter what you try and do to boost yourself up. He's the bloke who'll walk into the dressing room and immediately destroy the atmosphere. And that's what he's doing at Newcastle United.
I like the fact he is like a dementor. Like, I've had to watch Harry Potter with the kids, but you're right. Like that is it. He's a dementor and a tormentor. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Steve, one of the significant things that says a lot about the dressing room at the moment is the fact that Richie was asked to do some media work about the so-called spat on the training ground.
Ben Crowther's asked about it tonight.
There you go. And he just wouldn't do it. And that, to me, tells me everything about what's going on behind the scenes, and about there's a discerning lack of leadership in our club, and we've talked about this for a couple of weeks, not just from within the dressing room, but from above that and above that, where this constant ghost ship just drifting without somebody at the tiller, without somebody laying down the law. There's things happening in that dressing room and in the background that are just prime examples of a total lack of leadership and direction, and a total lack of respect for those who are supposed to be given the leadership and direction. And you know what? That's not going to be a criticism of any player or anybody in that dressing room. I'm always of the opinion that a football dressing room needs to be treated like a school away day, like a school trip. You need to organise them, because they're used to being organised like that. They need to be told, you be here, you bring a passport, you bring this, you do that, and then we want you here by then. And that's what they expect, and that's what they need. And I genuinely think there's none of that happening at our club at the moment from the people who should be delivering it. There may be things happening from people at different levels, perhaps. For example, we've talked about Graham Jones being brought in. He seems to be doing something significantly different at the moment. I know I've been led to believe, from example, from those who do the stats and the work behind the scenes and the analysts at the club, that Bruce is only interested in how many miles you run, which for me, that's quite significant considering you pick Shelby every week, but that's another matter. Whereas Jones wants to look at so much more. He wants to look at the total metrics, and he wants to look at everything that's going on. Hello. And he wants to look at it so much more than Bruce is looking at. But what then influence can he deliver if Bruce is still picking the team, and Bruce is still saying, well, this is all I'm interested in. There are so many gaps in leadership in our club at the moment, and that's, for me, the most concerning thing of all.
Yeah, Matt Ritchie's interesting, Ian, isn't it? I mean, that one just seems to not want to go away, that story. And, you know, at a time when we should be looking at playing our best players, and I still think that he's got a lot to offer, it's disappointing that a manager can't put his differences aside with players such as Ritchie and Longstaff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, at least when he's on the pitch, Ritchie looks like he's interested. He looks like he cares, and he looks like he can kind of cajole other players into a bit more activity, a bit more urgency on occasions. And therefore, from that perspective, I think he's an important member of the squad. I don't think he's the best player that we've ever had at Newcastle, but he's someone who you need in a scrap, and that's where we are. We're in a scrap, Bruce is telling us we've got to accept that we're in a relegation battle, and that we're the bottom threes, just like hanging below. We're there. We know that, man. It's like we need to be told that nonsense.
Ian, at the end of the day, if you were to pick our best 11, if everybody was to pick their best 11 from our squad, if everybody's fully fit, I don't think any of us would have Ritchie in that starting 11.
Probably not, no.
But what he brings around the squad potentially is something different. And that's what you need, is that blend in the squad. The people who are prepared to add what they can bring as a leader and as a personality, even if they're not playing. And
see, he would be in my starting lineup. I put my team out the other week. He would be in mine, and I would make him I would have had him captain of that team ahead of Lascelles before he started to make a bit of progress. He seems to have kicked himself up the backside, Lascelles, and he scored 2 crucial goals. But yeah, look, Ritchie's my favourite player still at the club, but it's between him and Kieran Clark. They're both leaders. They're both players who can do the bit on the pitch, and the kind of people you need around the dressing room. But he's no good if the manager's got no faith in them. He's not going to play. He's not going to play to that manager, is he? When he's done what he's done to him.
I was just also wondering about the manager's demeanour today. I mean, I'm wondering whether, because he's the manager, he has to go and do the press conferences, but at the same time, somebody upstairs has said to him, "We're just going to let Graham Jones decide everything from here on in." So he's the manager in the picture frame, but not actually doing it behind the scenes. I mean, look at that's big. It's a huge assumption, but why this sort of downtrodden demeanour? I mean, he's still getting paid a huge amount of money every week.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, what's your take on the Ritchie situation?
But you know what? I think we touched on it last week with if I just sort of respond to what Ian said. We touched on it last week with Bruce, where I think we mentioned that the word was that he was basically picking a team and that was it. There was nothing happened during the week. In terms of Ritchie, I know exactly where you're coming from. I can hear both sides. I can understand that on a form guide sort of opinion that probably what Ian's looking at, what Mitch is looking at. You're looking at it and thinking, well, the lad's been injured all season. When he did come back, the results weren't going well. We seem to have changed formation. Perhaps the formation doesn't suit a Matt Ritchie on a narrower scope than they're playing. But I can understand where you're coming from, Steve, because we are at the point where we need leaders. We need someone who can, as you say, kick backsides, who can shout and cajole and help to, or hope it can drive a team forward. At the moment, until the last couple of games, we haven't had any of that from anyone. They all seem to be just playing their own game and not doing anything. And yes, we've seen a little bit of the old Lascelles of late, the goals that he scored, and a little bit of more urgency about him in terms of his defensive play. And I wonder whether that's coincided with Dubravka coming back in goal, to be perfectly honest. But yes, I get where you all come from. The jury's out for me in terms of the personnel, and it, what it is, we just seem to be it just seems to be throwing names into a hat continuously. We don't know, because we don't know the formation that Bruce wants to play. We don't know where, if he's obviously just throwing names out there and throwing players on the pitch, because when you play Gale on the right and then you play him on the left and then you play him behind a centre forward in a midfield number 10 role, that none of which suit him. That for me shows that we've got a manager who's just decided. Somebody's told them that we're going to play a formation. They've practiced it in training all week, this particular formation, and then he just turns around and goes, "All right, now we've got the formation. Now I'll think about the personnel." Oh yeah, I tell you what, yeah, the Chronicle's been shouting out for Gale, so I tell you what, I'll stick Gale in one of those places. And you go,
Steve, we've talked about this for the last few weeks. At one point he was talking about it was all about players and not formation, and then all of a sudden he's saying it's about the formation and not the players. Well, which one is it, Steve?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's strange times at Newcastle, and we're dicing with what Premier League lives really having this guy in charge. Tom Dixon says not Newcastle United related, but what do you think of the BZG Derby takeover? Mitch, come to you, mate.
Well, yeah,
our BZG resident expert.
I've got to be really careful what I say because of certain laws here in the UAE, and I quite like living here.
If you want.
Look, one of the things that I've been told is there's a suggestion that the seller breached the contract, and that's why Sheikh Khaled refused to pay the money. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? That sounds very familiar. The way the BZG takeover at Derby was set up was quite different to the way they set up the first time round when they tried to buy Newcastle United. Very different again to the way that me and Steve worked with them subsequently after that to try and make it a little bit more sensible, shall we say, and more sustainable. And then the Derby takeover was different again. And if you want to dig a little bit into where it went wrong at the start for me. If you look at the holding company that they set up, there was 2 resignations from that company before they passed the owners and directors test, and that's where you do your digging, and I'll say no more than that. For me, it was always doomed to failure unless Sheikh Khaled said, yep, let's go ahead and do it. Midhat he's a lovely guy. I love spending time with him. I love chatting with him. He's such an interesting character. Anybody who once has WhatsApps to Newcastle fans and that gets volleyed with a load of them has to be an interesting character, if you ask me. And he has all the best intentions in the world, but he can only do what his ultimate boss says. And I think that's where the crux of this debacle rather is. Do I think we'll see BZG talked about with any football club again? No, I don't think so.
Steve, who isn't currently living in anywhere to do with it, BZG. Yeah, what's your take on this? Can you be a little bit more? I don't know, not outspoken, just a little bit more.
I think maybe
go in a little bit more detail, maybe.
Yeah, well, I can put my 5 pence in. You had the situation at Derby is you had what looked like the makings of a deal. And then you had a football club going out and taking a massive loan from a hedge fund or an American investment fund. You then had a manager that was sacked. You then had a player put in as the manager on a much more enhanced contract. You then had an assistant manager come in again on a what would have been in Steve McLaren a very, very lucrative contract. And while all this is going on, there's a football club who somebody signed up thinking that they're signing a club with A, this manager, B, not that manager, B, that bloke still being a player, and D, not loan.
And not that loan added on the top yet.
Yeah, and then an accusation's made that the deal hasn't gone through yet and we're running out of cash, so we'll go and borrow a little bit more. And all of this time, this sort of like all these plates that are spinning that you weren't expecting to be spinning are starting to fall off the top of the loop, and at some point in time, and Mitch mentioned there about the fact that things changed. Things changed with Mike Ashley when BZG thought they'd shook hands and in that original deal, and then it turned out that there was changes wanting to be made, and I suspect that similar things happened. I also suspect that maybe between September and December, not only the financial climate at Derby County, but the financial climate around BZG or BZI changed significantly. And you can imagine then you're in a situation where you've got you've got a contract and you've got both parties trying to alter the contract in totally opposite directions to suit themselves and not each other. And I think they reached an impasse. And I think legally they may both have felt that the contracts were done and it was just money to be handed over. But I don't think anybody really wanted to hand the money over, knowing that it wasn't the deal that they originally thought they were involved in, or that there was a load of caveats that they couldn't clear out. That's my thought. That's where I think it's come from. And again, the whole idea that you suddenly have American investors in MSD lending money at ridiculous rates, they've just done it with West Ham. They've just lent West Ham a huge amount of money, £120 million at 12% interest. That's going to be used to pay off other debts.
That's crazy.
And it's also happened at Southampton with similar amounts of money. It happened at Sunderland, and it happened at Derby. And you're thinking, what's going on here? That all of a sudden football clubs, because they haven't got into the banks and can't dip their fingers in the same way as Arsenal and Tottenham did with the Bank of England and taking out loans. What they're doing is they're going to these investment houses in America who are desperate to get their hands on it. And we've talked about American investment in football clubs before. And not only that, but these loans that they get have massive penalty clauses where clubs have actually put the grounds up, or a training ground and stuff like that as the collateral. And you could find out that if you forego on a payment, that you lose the entire football club. That type of thing.
That's 100% what MSD are hoping for. Is they're going to pick up a club for now, based on a loan that they've made and a couple of defaulted payments, and that'll happen. There's a club will go to somebody like MSD. If it isn't MSD, it'll be another one of the American investors who are sniffing around at the moment, because the American investors sense opportunities based in terms of football stroke entertainment stroke franchise related football.
Yeah.
And that's why they're sniffing around at the moment, because they know financially football is a mess in Europe. And it's a bigger mess than people realize. And that's why me and Steve are probably at the point of boring everybody by talking about it, because there's more and more coming out every day. Like I say, this deal with BZI and Derby, personally, I think was doomed from day one, because of the way it was set up and the way it was done. And obviously, if as I've been told, if the top man is pissed off and he's not going to hand the money over, it ain't going to happen.
I mean, Ian, it feels like we've swerved something here to me. I mean, obviously Steve and Mitch know a lot more about this and have had dealings with people on the inside over the course of the last few years with BZG. But for me, as an outsider who just listens to what they say, and probably like a lot of the viewers, you just feel like we've swerved something, which could have been a bit of a disaster for us.
Well, absolutely, but the trouble is we're still stuck with the guy that we've got, and all the speculation and all of the hurt and all of the sort of wrangling over the potential for new owners coming in. The one thing that really does strike me about the whole lack of reality about this is that despite all the trouble that the club are in, and now potentially if Fulham win tonight will be in the bottom three, Mike Ashley won't move an inch on his valuation of the club. And the trouble is, his valuation of the club makes it an unsaleable asset from my perspective if we're not allowed to sell to the consortium who've currently got that bid in. And if Ashley won't sell below that £300 million figure, well, nobody will buy it, because I'm afraid to say it doesn't matter how much Mike Ashley thinks the club is worth. What matters is how much somebody else is willing to pay for it. That's the bottom line. I've said this before. There's a little codicil on the bottom of all the adverts when you want to buy a financial product. The value of your assets can go down as well as up. And under Ashley, he's actually depreciated the assets significantly since he bought it.
Yeah. Somebody was asking how your kitchen's coming on, Ian. Have you had the improvements done?
Not yet complete. I'm waiting for my new oven. Right, I'm waiting for my new oven, but I'm very, very pleased with the work. So Arcot Interiors and Chris Collins, the lads have done a great job. But I'm waiting for my oven, and once that's done, I'll be well, basically, as you know, I do some cooking. I'll be like a dog with the proverbial,
Very good. Okay, first regular section of the week coming up. Double points to this guy. Troll of the week. What an absolute belter. Hasn't gone to a great deal of time and effort to write the actual tweet, but what a great name. Thanks, Wes. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. I left it up just in time for you to see there, lads. And that's actually the Marx Brothers as his profile picture. So thanks to Ferk Hugh, who just said knob. Thanks, mate. Brilliant. You're the troll of the week.
That's a name that'll open doors, Stevie, innit?
You're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. Unbelievable the time and effort some people do to making these up. Lots of stuff coming in. Stu Penman, of course, who does the retro show, says if the takeover happens soon, I can see the Amigos celebrating joyously, whereas Ian will be cool as you like, Shearer-esque, arm raised in the air with a knowing expression. Is that how you're going to celebrate the takeover?
I will have a quiet moment of contemplation.
Brilliant. Paul William, who's waiting for his tea outside Dunstan Fish and Chip Shop, says, like Supermax says, send Steve Bruce home on gardening leave, which was a great suggestion. Yeah. Barry Hogan says, is there anything new governmental when the fans will be allowed to tell Mr. Bruce what we think of him in the ground? Still ongoing, this talk, Ian, of 10,000 people being back in the ground for Sheffield United and Fulham games. It's something I'm not really for. I've got to be perfectly honest. The fallout amongst fans, for starters, about who gets to go and who doesn't get to go will certainly be a nightmare. But I presume there's nothing further forward on that, Ian, is there? At governmental level, they've got other things to be worried about at the minute.
No, I mean there is speculation, but I think the only real speculation that I've seen where there is any potential likelihood of it coming about is last game of the season, and I don't know how the Premier League could do that, because when all the grounds are closed, it's a level playing field for everybody. But if you have the last game of the season, you've got 10 clubs with an advantage on the last game of the season. Now, I think our situation will probably be sorted out by then, because the way things are going, I've got a funny feeling that we'll be out of sight.
Yeah. John Askew says, evening lads and lasses, at the end of the Villa game, one of the Newcastle NUFC Matters viewers text that Bruce sets us up not to win. I think he's right. What do you think? Mitch, what's your take on that? Does he set us up not to win?
I think he tries to set us up not to lose. Mm-hmm. And I think he's, the last two games have proved that he's quite happy with a point. When there was a lot more on offer. He's using his favourite phrase about points accumulation. It's like, yeah, Steve, we know how the league works. You play every team twice, and it's the people with the most points get the highest in the league. We know this. We know that's how it works. Everybody in football knows how that works. Don't try and dress it up as like something clever that you're coming out with now. So, that's just ridiculousness, to be fair. And that's probably me being polite. He's focusing on the minimum he wants to come away with as a point, or the maximum he wants to come away with as a point.
Yeah.
We've wasted opportunities in winnable games and in winnable positions. That last 5 minutes against Villa, we suddenly looked threatening. We were already 1-0 down by then, for God's sakes. So what was the point of the previous 85 minutes? And even without the players who are missing through injury, you should have enough to put a side together to at least see we're giving it a go. And I don't see that. I see we're giving it a go to not lose. And if you set up for 0-0 and that's your maximum expectation, more often than not, you're going to come away with less. And that's the frustration. I think we all see that. So I don't think it's about not setting up not to win. I think it's more he's frightened about losing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, an old sage once said to me, if you go out to try and get a draw, the best that you're likely to get is a draw.
Is a draw.
And the trouble is, though, there is another option, and that is a defeat. And the thing is, if you set out for a draw and your game plan goes wrong, it's then difficult to recover from that. And I mean, luckily enough, we did against Villa. But I'm afraid to say, if you look at that bottom four, I'm going to leave West Brom and Sheffield United out of that, but that bottom four, where you've got Burnley, Brighton, Newcastle and Fulham, we're not the form side. No. We're not the form side. We're the only team in that bracket, in that 4-club bracket, who hasn't got a win in the last 5. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, Steve, is Bruce setting up for a draw? Do you get a feeling that he feels if he can get just points out of these games, that he's going to get across the finishing line and survive by the skin of his teeth?
Yeah, I do. I think he hasn't sussed out that it's 3 points for a win, and he would only need 3 wins and a draw, and yet he's chasing 7 draws, and that's where he's heading. It's like that's just unbelievable, just absolutely unbelievable. You're talking there, Steve, about people in the ground. Yeah, Bob Dylan had a quote in one of his songs in Hard Rain. He said, I met one man who was wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded with hatred. I tell you what, when we get in the ground, there'll be 10,000 were wounded with hatred when we get in there. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous. His way, you never look at, you should never be in a situation where you're looking at what the other teams around you are going to do and then working out your strategy based on that. But that's what he's doing. He's going, right, well, if they win, but I get a point, I'll still be ahead of them just, and I should, all right. When you're thinking, no, you should be going out. As a professional, you should be going out to win. You should be setting your team up to win. And if he did set his team up to win, not only did I think that he would get somewhere and he would get some results with the squad he's got, but I also think he would have an awful lot more respect among the fans if we actually went down fighting. But at the minute, we're not going down fighting. We're going down with a whimper that isn't even worthy of a dead cat, to be perfectly honest. It's crazy. I just despair of his tactics. I despair of his style, and I just despair of what is actually going on in his head, because I cannot quite understand it, because it defies all football logic.
But you've just said what's going on in his head. I mean, and I think part of the problem with sending him on gardening leave would get lost amongst the cabbages, because it's just one of them situations where there isn't anything going on in his head. The guy hasn't got a clue. I'm really sorry to say that. I don't like to be disparaging about people, but I'm afraid to say he's just out of his depth. And the problem is, week after week after week, he comes up against managers for the teams that we're playing who are all better than him. And they might not have a better set of players, but they know how to set their players up to play to their strengths. He doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't like tactics. Well, come on. We're talking about the modern game of professional football.
You know what, Ian? I think if either of us could put a team together, if we were opposition managers, if we were given a team and just said, go out there and beat one of Steve Bruce's teams, we could do it at a stroke, because we would know for a fact that the team we're up against was defeated before they ever left the pitch. We're halfway there. You're always going to be halfway there with Newcastle. The opposition manager is halfway to a win the minute we walk out on the pitch, because, as I said earlier, the dementor has got to us, and it's affecting the players. And as Steve said earlier there, the last 5 minutes, once we went 1-0 down and we seemed to be off the leash, and we suddenly started to play with a sense of urgency. But that was like, the 87th minute? We had 86 minutes of dross. Let's at least put the effort in. We know that the players have got the ability to put the effort in if you let them off. If you're giving them the tactics and the style of football to let them play to their advantage, play to their skills, play to their talent. But it's just like they're being told to just go out and play a style of football or play in a manner with a tactic that just does not work. And the only person who doesn't know that is him.
And look, I don't want to leave people, watching this tonight and listening to this tonight, feeling completely miserable by the time we finish the show. But I mean, I suppose the one ray of potential salvation that we might have is the form of Southampton. And if we can accumulate more points than Southampton in the next, they're 5 points ahead of us, but their form is really quite poor. And it might be that they're on a bit of a plummet, fingers crossed, and get sucked into it. At the minute, though, they're 5 points ahead of us, 2 points ahead of Burnley.
Yeah.
This time last week, I was saying that about Burnley, though.
I don't know.
Changes quickly. Somebody in the chat asked earlier, Mitch, about this team. Is this the worst team that you've seen in the last 13 years under Ashley?
Not at all. I think we're better than the last one that got relegated. I don't think on paper it's better than the first time we got relegated under Ashley. That relegation was all down to, again, it was avoidable. It was avoidable. Every relegation under Ashley's been avoidable. And if we get relegated again this season, it was avoidable. He doesn't understand football. He might understand business and he might understand gambling, but he doesn't understand football. So they're all avoidable. But I do think this is probably better on paper than the previous squad that got relegated. I don't think it's better on paper than the first squad that got relegated. That's just my opinion. But the circumstances of the relegation are quite slightly different, because we've had opportunities to build on the points advantage we had earlier in the season when it was obvious we were riding well luck and the football wasn't going to get away anyway. You could have changed the manager. You could have invested more in the playing squad to protect your investment. You could have done a bit of both, but you decided not to because you're ever the gambler. And the question is, has he banged all his chips on black or red? I really don't know.
Steve, do you agree with Mitch?
I do, yeah. I do, actually. We don't always agree on everything, but on that particular one, absolutely. We've had many an argument across the table.
I was going to say, should have seen some of our WhatsApps this week. Jesus.
But no, on that one, yeah, I think there's talent in this squad. I think the talent is there. I think it's entirely down to what they're being told to do, quite frankly. And the press conferences are screaming out, telling us, "I'm just setting up for a draw. I'm just setting up for a draw." And I think that'll be good enough. One win later on, he'll load it up. If we finish fourth, he'll load it up and saying, "Well, that's job done. I did what I was expected," despite the fact at the start of the season it was like top 10, and beyond. But it's just, and you know what? I sit here and I think, and I've heard the argument: if we change him now, would it be any good? I listened to it. It was actually mentioned. I mean, we've mentioned it many times, and a reporter actually asked him in the press conference today. The fact that on previous two occasions, Ashley twisted, got rid of a manager, and it didn't work out. But on other occasions where he didn't twist, then he managed to survive by the skin of his teeth, like under John Carver, for example. And this reporter actually asked Bruce whether he thought that it was going down a similar vein. And it was interesting, his response, which was along the lines of, "Well, that's not for me to say." Well, it's for you to tell us, mate. What do you think? Do you honestly think? Are you following a path that failed, or are you following a path that you think succeeded? Which one are you? Are you John Carver? Or are you Rafa Benitez with 10 games to go? Are you Alan Shearer with 8 games to go? What are you? Where do you think they went wrong, and where do you think you can go right? It's just mental.
It is. Terence Swift says, being a cabbage gardening leave seems pretty apt for Bruce. Good one, Terence. That was in the Ian Mearns dad joke category. I mean, yeah, it's just ongoing, this, guys, and it, you know, until there's a decision made at the highest level, we're never really going to know. But I mean, Ian, it does seem to me as if he's hedging his bets a little bit. Steve Bruce, he is going for draws. He's not setting up to win. And as for Mike Ashley, he is a gambler, like Mitch says. You know, he's gambled since he came to the club, and you know, he's going to gamble again. I don't think any kind of defeat tomorrow will see us lose him. I think he's made his decision. The big roll of the dice was bringing Graham Jones in to completely undermine him, and that's where we're at. I don't think there'll be any changes until the end of the season, and God forbid we do go down, then, you know, Bruce could still be there next season. It just depends. It depends. It depends if the takeover's completely dead in the water by then or not.
But the problem is, Steve, is that, you know, you were theorising a couple of months ago that, you know, some teams could go down with some of the lowest points totals ever. But I think whoever's the third bottom club this time could go down with 38, 39 points. I think we'd be optimistic to get 38 or 39 points from the position that we're in at the minute, given the fixtures that we've got left to play. You know, I mean, tomorrow is such a massive game for us now. I mean, it's more than a 6-pointer. It's really determines the rest of the season, because if we lose tomorrow, I think that might be lights out, frankly. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's lights out for the club. I think we could go down. There's no doubt about it. I'm not confident at all. If we get beat tomorrow, I don't know if we can recover from it. I really don't. Some huge games coming up.
Well, particularly if Bruce is going for a point-a-game strategy, bearing in mind we've got Tottenham, West Ham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Leicester, Man City to play. You know, if you're looking to get a point a game from all of those, well, you know, I hope it stays fine for him. You know, and then you've got Burnley, Sheffield United, and Fulham, which are potentially winnable games. You would have thought, but I'm afraid to say that our form isn't as good as some of those clubs. I mean, remember, Sheffield United have already beaten us this season.
Yeah. Malcolm MacDonald and John Gibson made a really good point last night, and Gibbo was quite animated about it, as he often is. And he basically said, you know, we're cheering. I've seen a lot of fans cheering the fact that Callum Wilson, ASM, and Miggy Almiron are coming back. He said, but can you tell me exactly what they did before they got injured? He says, they're half the reason that we're in this position. He was, you know, he had a valid point, really. I couldn't argue. He says Almiron runs around but doesn't have an end to it. He says the SM, you know, can get you the odd goal. Callum Wilson scored goals, but he's, you know, a lot of them are penalties. Has he got a point?
Look, I would rather have them in the side. I would end the story. I would rather have them in the side. At least it looks like you've got an outlet. I'm afraid to say that we haven't got a recognised striker. You know, particularly when you're playing Dwight Gale on the wing, and I'm afraid to say, with the best will in the world, you know, I think he's an honest player, but I'm not sure if Dwight Gale is actually good enough for what we need to get out of this position at the moment, and I don't think he is, frankly.
Michael Temple, sorry to hear about your friend, mate. Of course, yeah, sending condolences to you, mate. Obviously, don't know what the circumstances were, but yeah, I'm sure everybody will say exactly the same as Mitch Downs' shot. Clearly in the bar tonight.
I'm a Chelsea Robs, mate, so the hands randomly bring whatever comes up the stairs every now and again.
Ah, right. So, okay. What do you drink? What are you drinking? Everybody wants to know what you're drinking, as usual.
It's whatever cans come in at my possession. So I've had a Carlsberg, I've now got a Heineken, and whatever else comes my way. So I've had two Sambucas as well. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. Well, it is coming up towards the weekend, mate.
As Stu would tell you, and I think he's coming over to Dubai soon. So I think we'll probably be doing another 3 Amigos from here at some stage, and Stu will be here. He'll tell you. Rob's a good lad, and his place is a fantastic place to come and chill. He's got a great bar. He's got a fantastic pool table, And he's a bloody good cook as well. He cooks some amazing Thai food. And it's always a place to come and just let the weekend go, you know. It's a great place, man.
Paul Rocket says, what do you think of what Souness said, that Newcastle's a graveyard for managers, Mitch?
Oh, Christ. Souness, I mean, I've suffered more of Souness than you lot of late, because he was a regular on BA out here a few years ago for 3 or 4 years when he wasn't getting any work in the UK. And he trots out the same old tired lines because he didn't get it, didn't understand it. The one thing that frustrates me about him, he went to Turkey, he went to Istanbul, and he got Galatasaray versus Fener. He got that intensity, he understood it, and then he come to Newcastle and decided he was going to be a hard man to try and put certain players in their place, and just cocked it up, and then and then got himself into a tangle, and then blamed the fans for it. And at the end of the day, you know, some of the lazy stereotypes that persist about Newcastle United fans and what they want stem from him. Battering the media, not just in the UK, but around the globe, about his experience. And his experience was, mate, you weren't good enough. You didn't do enough. That's why we couldn't get away with you, because your teams were rubbish, your signings were rubbish, and you just demotivated not just the team, but the bloody whole fan base as well. You know,
he said he went to Turkey, he didn't go with Stu Penman, did he, for his hair?
No, probably not. Oh God, he's never going to hear the end of that, is he? Yeah, mate.
Classic.
I mean, I think he's got a point though. I mean, Newcastle has been a graveyard for managers over the decades, because we've had a collection of crap owners until the John Hawley era. Yes. You know, we had a collection of crap owners, the Westwoods, the McKeegs, and now Ashley. So, like, that's a lot of blocks of years, you know, when we've had, frankly, owners that wouldn't invest in the playing squads to the extent that the fans deserved and the club could probably afford. But now, you know, we've got another one, 13 years, nearly 14 years since Ashley took over. And of course it's a graveyard for managers, because they're only allowed to invest to a particular level. And of course, on top of that, you've got other people making decisions about where your investment capital goes, and you spend £40 million on one player. £40 million.
Ashley's happy to let us tick at the moment. That Joe Linton one is an absolute errant blip, which we'll never get to the bottom of. I don't think, or understand why that was done. Ties in with what's on the screen there now about takeover talk and about Poundland and being linked with Poundland, about somebody how Ashley thinks. That's actually, I would disagree totally. Ashley's always been, in my opinion, a willing seller as long as you put on the table what he wants. And PIF and the consortium involved with PIF are the genuine first people who've turned around and said, we will put on the table what you want and get this deal done. Go back to the Canadian deal that me and Steve worked on. They were prepared to put on the table what the club was worth, and then another 100 million came into play about what he was owed, and they just turned around and said, sod you. You've suddenly changed the deal. BZG was happy to run with them because they were going to put on the table what he wanted, and that didn't go ahead for a number of different reasons, which it's not worth going into now. It's history. Yeah. You know, but he will sell as long as he gets his own way. He's a little princess, and if you fluff him and tell him he's the bestest seller in the world ever, he will sell on his terms only. That's why he's a willing seller. He's a difficult seller, and always has been. And my big concern, if we get relegated, is he prepared to suck up that 111 million he's still owed? To answer another question that was on the screen before, is he prepared to suck up that amount of money or not? Because if he is, he will sell the club. How many offers a month, Steve?
In the last 3 months, 90-odd offers we had heard.
There you go. There's always people sniffing around the club. I noticed the Chronicle today are mentioning somebody from the Far East who may be interested, who's oil rich, etc., who's interested in gobbling the club up. That's fine. provided Mike Ashley's prepared to take a hit. Is Mike Ashley prepared to take the hit? The fact he's dug his heels in and basically warned off any other buyer over the current situation as we're heading to arbitration would suggest to me he's not. He wants his money back, and he wants his money back in full. And that concerns me going forward if we are relegated, because is he willing to cut his losses and go? He will never get another offer like this. And so are we left in a situation where we're just going to forever sail as a ghost ship with no one at the tiller? I really don't know. The fans may eventually make their statement known, and then suddenly, if there are a lot more empty seats at St James's Park, that might make something of more of a statement. Apathy is the killer. Apathy is the opposite of love, not hate. And I see lots of apathy at the moment, and I see something that is a different situation in Newcastle United than we've had in the previous 13 years. I think that's why he's still holding on for this. I still just don't understand someone who's not prepared to protect his investment by either jettisoning a manager who was obviously floundering, or by investing in January and adding to the squad in a way that would have been constructive no matter who the manager was. Inaction, is it paralysis by analysis? I've got absolutely no idea, but it depresses me greatly.
Yeah, I think it depresses everybody, mate. It's just never ending. Hopefully we will get some kind of some end to this scenario in the next few months, and we can all move on to a bright new era. Time for our second section. Every week, Mitch pours through the internet, pours through his books, pours through his magazines and papers, and finds some fantastic...
And gets a lot of help from some fantastic people on Twitter as well.
And gets some fantastic help from some fantastic people. Some of them are non-PC, so obviously we have to make sure that Mitch ignores those ones. Some are spitting dabs, as they say in the Northeast, and here is this week's Tune Lookalike.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it, I don't think.
Oh.
It's very good, it's very good. Who is the guy on the left? We know the guy on the right.
It's Woo Shock. He's the mascot for Wichita University in the States. And apparently he's some sort of bundle of corn.
Wonderful. That is wonderful. Anybody who you need to thank for that?
Yeah, what is he on Twitter? Geordie lad, he's Local Hero 2021 on Twitter. So
Brilliant
thanks
stuff.
for that, mate.
Brilliant stuff. Well done. That is our Tune Lookalike for this week.
And I just say, Steve, you talked about Souness and it's saying it was a graveyard for managers. It's not. It's a graveyard for managers' egos. Managers with egos. It was a graveyard for Pardew with an ego. It was a graveyard for McLaren with an ego. A graveyard for Souness and Hullett, and Bruce now. But it wasn't a graveyard for Gira. It wasn't a graveyard for Chris Hughton. It wasn't a graveyard for Rafa Benitez. They didn't come in with their egos, but the previous five did, and they fell. They fell because of their egos, because they came in thinking they were better than the football club. That was the problem. That's Souness's problem. He came in thinking he was better than Newcastle United. Hullett thought he was better than Newcastle United, and Alan Shearer rolled into one. That's why he failed. And we all know what Pardew failed, ultimately failed. And I'll give him his due. He got with a fifth place. He got into Europe. But Pardew had this ability to put you on some absolutely amazing long runs of defeats. And that's what killed him in his ego. He couldn't take it anymore. So when Souness talks about graveyards, it was a graveyard for your ego, Graham. That's all.
Yeah, I would agree. Deanie asks, Ian, are all MPs in the North East putting pressure on the Prime Minister to help get the takeover done and the investment into the region?
Well, you see, the thing is, though, the government don't see it as their job. They just don't seem to be at all interested. And Oliver Dowden, the Secretary of State for Department for Culture, Media and Sport, they said, that they won't intervene in this issue either for or against a particular takeover. I mean, all that I know is that the current government want to maintain a relationship with Saudi Arabia and have licensed the sale of arms to Saudi Arabia despite international condemnation. So, obviously, they want to keep in with Saudi Arabia from that perspective, but they won't intervene. You just don't see it as their role, and they don't see it as important either, by the way.
Yeah. Gary Milliken also says, is your favourite song, Ian, always in the kitchen at parties?
Was that Jonah Louis?
It was, yeah.
All right. That's why you'll always find me in the kitchen at parties. No, I've not heard it. What's it gone like?
How wise of you not to attempt to tune in.
Also available on weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Brilliant. Big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN.
I do quite a lot of bar mitzvahs around here.
I can imagine, yeah, Gated MP, of course you would. Spider VPN, big shout out to them. They sponsored us in February and into March for your internet security. Give them a shout. And also a big shout out to a sponsor that's joined us this month, Geordie Riffs, premium guitar lessons for beginners and children, guitar repairs and service and recording studio. Follow them on Facebook at Geordie Riffs Official. Their website's geordieriffs.co.uk. And as I said, all week they are trying to build their Instagram up. So if you are on that social media platform, give them a follow at Geordie Riffs and help them boost their numbers. Big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk as well. Makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wales and Newcastle. Jab Signature, who make the flyers and the posters. And if you're a first time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Hit the little Newcastle Legends button down in the bottom right hand corner. It is free to subscribe. Hit the little thumb up to like the video and click share to share it to your social media. If you miss any of the shows during the week, and we do 7 a week during lockdown and during this COVID pandemic, and you miss any of them, you can find us on your podcast providers such as iTunes and Spotify, and again, we're free to download on there. And if I do forget, whilst I'm going through all of these, the matchday bucket will be in operation tomorrow for the Newcastle game against Brighton, and it is your way of being able to donate to the food bank through the matchday bucket, NUFC fans foodbank.co.uk. And tonight is the night when we finish our latest raffle, if you like, auction on my timeline on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter at Steve Wraith, make a bid for the Northeast Flight Academy prize. Brilliant prize, this.
Fabulous prize.
Currently at £120. It fly across Newcastle, including St James's Park. 2 adults and 1 child. £120 that's at the moment. Get your bid in. It's a pinned tweet at the top. Get yourself onto there and make a bid. All proceeds go to the food bank. You've got about 45 minutes before that ends tonight. I'm going to go through the Steve Hasty quiz question now in case I forget. So this is to win tickets for a pantomime. Oh yes, it is, in December. And again, this is qtechshop.co.uk who have given us these tickets. I will have to get back to you on the date. If memory serves us correctly, it was the 4th of December. I did ask John, but he's...
oh, no, it's not.
Oh, yes, it is. But yeah, basically, this is the winner. I think it's 4 tickets for the pantomime. We might have to double check that with John. He's not answering his phone today. So I'll come up with the clues and hopefully he'll get back in touch with us before the end of the show. Last week's clue was that. Picture of St James's Park and the word Ulwyn. So this week's clue, make sure you write that down and write this down. This is the second clue. Nice picture, autumnal picture of the Tyne Bridge. 188 appearances and 6 goals. Now, don't forget, you collect these clues and they all add up to give an answer to the main question at the end of the month. So another couple of clues to go, I think, and then we will have all your answers to give us the final answer, and it'll be the first person in the chat to give the answer. Now, John from QTech has also given us another prize, but I'll do that at 7 o'clock because he needs to be watching in the chat. He's given us 10 key rings to give away, so we'll be doing that at 7 o'clock. So as always, plenty to talk about and lots of comments coming in. We always apologise to everybody for not getting through them all. Simon Davies, he says, spot on regarding the squad strengths, Mitch. The weakness this time, apart from Ashley, is Bruce. Rafa, as purely an example, would have had his top half, of the table, which is interesting. Keith Patterson, good evening, mate. He says, good evening, lads. Miggy will play tomorrow and find the net. Train Son says, Mitch, we've played the season with one striker. We had more than that under McLaren, plus the likes of Sissoko on paper are much better than the current lot. All about opinions. Lots of people have different opinions.
Well, happy with that.
It's just the way that people feel. Instead of the starting 11, Bruce puts out, we have 11 players at the club who've not been used yet. Says Sutty. Go on, Mitch. You wanted to respond.
No, I was going to say, one of the things we've always enjoyed about this, and the feedback we've had about it, is that people feel like this is the kind of discussion that we're having in the pub with our mates.
Yeah.
Aye.
And everybody should feel that they can join in and give their opinion. And we're never going to judge or, even if we vehemently disagree, we're not going to fall out about it. That's the point of this show. That's the point of us having this discussion. It's mates talking about Newcastle United at the end of the day. And everybody watching and everybody contributing, everybody putting their comments in the bottom are contributing like mates. That's the point. You know what it is? As a fan base, we're prone to turning the guns in on each other. But yet, by God, when we get together and we are united, we're a force to be reckoned with. And the best thing we can always do is sometimes just say cheers and agree to disagree. And that's what I love about this. Bringing the different opinions, that's what we want to see down here. Because that fires us to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mitch, by the way, the Lucky Likey, I thought there was something to remind me of, and there's an advert for like cheesy strings. And it looks like the guy off the cheesy strings.
It does as well, aye.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I can see where you're coming from. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Kirk says, what if Mike has in his head the club's already sold and him not changing Bruce's defiance? If Mike wins his case and the club goes down, the Premier League will have to pay for his loss in value. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah.
It's a good theory, and it might be one that he's playing, but to me that's a gamble too far. I know you'd be turning around going, well, that's another court case. That's another 5 years in court, isn't it? Arguing that particular point. Far better to play the hand you've got, which is the hand that keeps you in the Premier League and keeps your takeover alive, rather than risk the takeover going down and you're trying to scramble around and pick the chips up off the floor and also dipping into everybody else's pocket while you're there to try and get more chips. I just can't see it happening.
Can you imagine defending that case and the lawyer says, well, Mr. Ashley, why didn't you actually keep your team in the Premier League in the first place? You had the opportunity to do that. You had 30 games in which to amass enough points to prevent this eventuality coming around, and you didn't do it.
I can just see the other 19 clubs in the Premier League all dipping into their pocket and going, oh, sorry about the 3 points. Sorry about the 6 points. There you go. Take $1 million off us. That's not a problem. Take $5 million. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Pie in the sky stuff for them.
Alan Thompson says, guys, I hate being defeatist, but I've got a horrible feeling there'll be a lot of anger and tears on Tyneside at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. I am dreading Saturday night. Sean says, the fixture list is terrifying. We have to win tomorrow. Honest opinion, lads, up or down? Ian, I'll go to you first.
I'm afraid to say I think it's looking pretty bad.
Yeah, you think we're going to go down? Mitch?
We'll stay up by 1 point.
Ooh. Steve?
Always the optimist. Always glass half full, although this one's only, a little bit full. I think we'll stay up. I think we'll stay up by the skin of our teeth. That's just the nature of not wanting to accept defeat. Defeat doesn't exist in my mind when it comes to football. It's not there. It's not on the agenda. You're disappointed when it happens, but you roll your sleeves up and you fight the next game and you fight twice as hard. And that's the way that we've always played football. That's the way we've always played 5-a-side, 11-a-side, play on Saturday, play on Sunday, whenever it was. Even playing in the back lane with your mates, you never wanted to get beat 3 points in. You never wanted to go back in goal, did you? That's
you. That's you. That's not the squad we've got at the minute. And the manager we've got.
Well, I'm hoping, being a Geordie lad from the East End of Newcastle, that Steve Bruce has got that in him, and he might suddenly find it one day.
Steve, we're all like that. I turn out in over 40s league here, and people hate playing against me because I hate losing. Hate losing to the point where I've even been told playing against people who are friends. Mitch, I love you to bits, but I hate playing against you when you cross that white line. And I will kick, I will pull, I will do anything to win even a tackle. And that's our nature. That's how we are. That's how we've been brought up.
Yeah.
I believe personally that the squad is with us on that. I worry that the people above them are not with us on that. But you're right. That's the way we're brought up to think. It's the way we're brought up to play. I wouldn't last 5 minutes on a modern football pitch. I'd be sent off after every 10 minutes.
I mean, the point I'm trying to get at, Mitch, as well, is that I expect when they cross the line that as professional footballers, that's what they're going out to do. They're going out, and I'm expecting that mentality. I want to see that in the next 10 games. Yeah. I want them to defy what the vast majority of fans have now got into their head that we're going down. I want them to show what they've got in the next 10 games or whatever it is. Is it 10 we've got left? I think it is, isn't it? I can't even remember.
I think so, yeah.
But it's getting like that every game. I know somebody said to him, he said, didn't he? Every game's a cup final, and somebody reminded them that we've never won a cup final since 1955. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like we want that fighting spirit. If they went out and they fought for their lives for the next 10 games and we still went down, I would turn around and go, well, at least we give it a try. That's better than nothing. I know Shearer tried that, didn't he? He tried to instill something and he couldn't get it out of them. He couldn't get certain players to even turn out. Certain players were worried about their England international career and stuff like that, and worried about an injury, worried about a nagging tweak. That goes out the window. Steve, you said last night on the show that you were looking for a team that included the Longstaffs and Dummett and players like that, Geordies getting stuck in, and you thought that if we've got four with the mentality that we four have got on that football pitch that can drive the other seven forward, great. Let's get out there and let's show them. But you don't have to be from Newcastle to be of that mindset. You can be from London, you can be from France, you can be from Italy, you can be from anywhere you like. As long as you go in with the right winning mentality and mindset, you can beat anybody on your day. And you're professional, remember.
I agree with that, and I've got nothing wrong with being optimistic at all. But I would just point out, in terms of the last 10 fixtures that we've got to play Brighton, Burnley, Fulham, and Sheffield United, which are the teams around us. And in the first half of the season, we've got 4 points from those games.
Aye.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Ian. I know exactly what you're saying. But my point is, at this short end of the season, I'm expecting those players to look at themselves and go, you know what? We picked up 4 points out of those possible 12. It's time to put this right. Because there's 12 easy points. There's 12 points that you can pick up like that if you put a performance in against a Sheffield United, a Burnley, a Fulham, a Southampton, or whatever it happens to be. You can take them. No question, you can take them. We would have taken them with a full ground, with the fans behind we would have done that. We've got to go out with a different mindset against Brighton than we had when they came up here and they played off the park mind. That we cannot have that sort of mindset in setting in with them. That's no good. But these lads have got it. They've got to show what they've got, because it's not doing them any good.
No, it's not.
I think what Steve Hogan had on the screen before there about the atmosphere in the ground. I think if the ground had been full of fans, I think the atmosphere, I think the word I will pick would have been vile at the moment. Toxic. And I don't think that would have perpetuated Bruce's reign, shall we say. For me, the biggest thing about empty grounds, particularly as an expat fan watching these asinine games that sometimes turn into training games, is that the absence of fans has absolutely totally strengthened the argument about the importance of fans in so many different ways, not just financial, Not just saying games go under because they don't have gate receipts or teams go under, but rather, saying a situation like this with Bruce, where he's getting away with it at press conferences because they're all done by Zoom, heavily controlled. Journalists can't jump in with extra questions. Journalists can be ignored, and they are. Let's be honest about that. Certain journalists want to ask questions and they can't because they're being ignored quite easily via Zoom, and the fans can't make their voice heard physically. And then we get accused of being social media warriors, rabid fans, as to quote someone this week. Rabid. If that ground was full, you'd see rabid. I'm quite sure of that. And so I think that is why we are currently everlong drifting and sleepwalking towards relegation, because the voice really isn't being heard properly. If you dare to make your voice heard in an honest fashion online, you're immediately accused of being a rabid fan. You know, negativity, it's an easy thing to chuck around. But when you've got journalists also now saying, look, I wanted to ask this and I wanted to ask that and I wanted to ask this and I was just ignored. It's very controlled, and it makes it so much easier for the club to just keep the status quo rather than make the change that should have been made probably after we lost to Sheffield United.
Yeah. Great. John is watching now from qtechshop.co.uk. So, as I said, he's got 10 key rings to give away. These little belters, NUFC Matters key rings, he's made up. These are the only 10 that are going to be made. They're all being given away for free. First 10 correct answers in the chat. John is keeping an eye out, so he'll be the judge, not me. So don't blame me if you're the first and he misses you. Who is Newcastle's oldest ever Premier League player in a first-team game? Who is Newcastle's oldest ever Premier League player in a first-team game? John's in the chat. He will give you the answer, and we will keep in touch with John and find out who the winners are. I'll leave that to you, John. Difficult to pick 10, I bet, but I'm sure he will do it. We're going to look ahead to Brighton now rather than at the end, because Ian's leaving us at 7 o'clock. And as promised, it's over to Toonstato.
Hi Steve, hello amigos. So Brighton Hove Albion tomorrow, crucial game for the season. The stats do not look good. 7 games in the Premier League, 4 draws, 3 defeats, only 1 goal scored. Josep Perez in one of Rafa Benitez's last games for Newcastle. All in all, very, very tough opponent. Also, you have to look back at the 2 cup exits in 2012 and 2013, when Brighton were still in the championship, and both years they eliminated Newcastle. On a more positive note, 2 of the most famous goals in the history of Newcastle were scored against them. Peter Beardsley in 1984 in Kevin Keegan's last competitive game for the Toon, the famous chip over Joe Corrigan. And of course, Modiyama in 2017 in the championship, in what was our last competitive win against Brighton. So, what to expect tomorrow? I would say it's a must-win for Newcastle, and it's a cup final.
Big thanks to Andre for his research. That is Toonstato. Big thanks to Neil Jackson at Media Arts as well for doing all these funky little intros and that. Really, really good. A lot of people tend to like Troll of the Week. I think that's most people's favourite. But I quite like Toonstato. It's got a bit of seriousness about it. Very political, Ian. It's quite it's like a political tune, that. So, Ian, Brighton, we've talked a little bit about it on and off. I suppose I'm going to ask you what team you're going to go for. We had a bit of inside news, I think, from Steve Hasty a bit earlier when I was speaking to him. He was saying that it doesn't sound like Kraft has travelled. Is that right, no. Steve?
Yeah, that's what I'd heard. I heard Kraft was travelling, and then I've heard, believe it or not, what I actually heard was that Kraft needs to get to Sweden on Sunday, and his flight's so early that he's been pulled out the squad so he can fly off for international duty, which I found absolutely.
There's loyalty for you, fantastic.
Exactly. I mean, there's a few be sort of putting up the flags on that one, I would imagine, because there's a few felt as though he hasn't been pulling up any trees at right back for Newcastle. But no, that's what I heard. I heard that he didn't travel. So if that's true, that basically means Manquillo is going to be being slotting in at right back,
or Murphy,
or Murphy, or Richie. now we start to speculate.
Yeah. Go on, we'll give it to you first, Ian. I mean, what's your views? How do you think this is going to go tomorrow? What team would you pick?
Well, I would pick the team which is most likely to get a couple of goals. You know, I'm not saying they will get a couple of goals, but it's a team that's most likely to get a couple of goals because I think we're going to need them. I think we're going to need a couple of goals in order to draw the match. You know, therefore we've got to try and play the team which has got the best chance of scoring a couple of goals, and you know, I desperately want Newcastle to win tomorrow. But I thought Brighton played really very well against Southampton, and they look like they've got they're coming. They've got a bit of form, so we really do need to put in like a top-notch performance tomorrow. It means every player running their guts out, and I mean every player that's put on the pitch, and therefore you need a team which is going to be put out there to work that absolute socks off tomorrow. And you never know, if they do work their socks off and grind Brighton down, we might actually get a victory. But we've got to go out there to try and compete with them every kick of the game, and we've got to go out there in order to try and score goals.
So would you play Ryan Fraser up front and Dwight Gale on the wing then, Ian?
I must admit, look, this might sound like bizarre, but I actually thought that in the last game against Villa, I thought that Joe Linton actually played quite well, and I would play him in behind. And if you're going to play Gale, you've got to play him as a striker, not play him on the wing. You know, I'm afraid. You know, I would play footballers, play players who can actually create something. You know, it's so frustrating at the minute they were watching the tune, because doesn't matter what we say, I wouldn't mind betting that Steve Bruce will contrive to shock us all.
Okay, going to give us a prediction, Ian?
I think I'm going to go for a ones each draw.
1-1 draw. Okay, I think draw seems to be quite popular with most people. Mitch, what's your team for tomorrow?
Do you know what it is? He's been playing this 4-4-2 diamond with quote-unquote split strikers, and we know how that works. We all had Championship Manager 99, so we know the movement that happens on a 4-4-2 diamond with split strikers. Doesn't work with the personnel we have, in my opinion. Again, he's slotting square pegs in round holes and finding octagons where he should be finding heptagons and things like that. I think with the squad we've got available, I gather Almiron's travelled, which is heartening. At least he's on the plane. So for me, Brighton still seem to play with a back three wing backs. I think we'll match them. I think we're going to match them tomorrow, for me. And I think we'll come away with a draw if we match them. Because we won't have the same personnel on the pitch as we did at the home game.
No.
Though that home game for me was another one of these ones that just wouldn't have gone the way it did had there been fans in the ground. If we'd conceded that really early goal and then the fans had got up for it, do you think would have conceded the second so quickly? I don't think so. It's the same scenario that saw Man U get thumped at home off Tottenham. They wouldn't have got thumped at home off Tottenham with a full ground. Not a chance. Not a bloody chance. And the same in that game. So I think that game we kind of have to write off. For me, we've got to match them, and if we match them, we will come away with a draw.
Okay, a draw seems to be popular. I just want to mention Dodo Bird, who's on tonight. Good evening, mate. He says, hello, Steve. Got a shock last night when you showed a picture of Malcolm MacDonald in that fashion photo shoot. Those were the trousers I was wearing in Gray's Club, but have not seen them since. Apart from the fact that I would like them back, this is conclusive evidence that my missing trousers was not an accident, but a deliberate, well-planned operation between Malcolm and Gibbo. Is it possible for you, Steve, to make a few inquiries, as I don't want to involve the police, but you will understand after all this time there are questions to be asked? Dodo Bird. Yeah, I will ask those questions as soon as I possibly can next week. The mystery of the missing trousers continues. For those of you regular viewers of NUFC Matters on a Thursday night.
But what was he doing in Gray's Club? What was he doing in...
He bumped into Gibbo, and then he can't remember much of the night and ended up with no trousers. So, yeah, and Gibbo... Cunning plan, that's what we thought. Yeah, well, Dodo Bird, come on next Thursday. You should come on next Thursday. Make sure you remind us. I've got a mind like a sieve. Steve, go on, mate. Your thoughts, your team selection. Pavel was the answer to the question, by the way. John's got all the answers in and all the winners in. Can you just message QTech Shop on Twitter to claim your prize? But who is Newcastle's oldest ever Premier League player in a first team game? It was Pavel Cernacek. So over to you, Steve, for your views.
Well, it wasn't Obafemi Martins.
Well, no,
or Duampa or any of the other oldies that were hard, you know. Before you mentioned Grey Club, there used to be a story about Gray's Club, Steve. You might be able to confirm it as a doorman, but there used to be a pair of trousers kept at the door at Gray's Club. And this particular pair of trousers, they were about a waist 46 and they were about a leg 20, right? And there were the pair of trousers they were covered in stains like you've never known, apparently. Absolutely hackiest pair of trousers. And there were the trousers when a group of 4 or 5 lads turned up and one of them was wearing jeans, and the bouncer at sort of 1 o'clock in the morning would say, "You can't come in here, lads, your mate's wearing jeans." And then you'd get the usual, "Oh, how are you, mate? How are you? Yeah, can you let us in?" Well, I tell you what, we've got a pair of trousers you can wear if you want. You know, we'll let you in if you wear them. And they would produce this pair of trousers, which usually went to a bloke who was about 6'7". And so the trousers were almost at half mast. They were covered in stains like you've never known. And I'll not even get into the conversation of what those stains might have been. And they were tied up round the waist with a bit of string. And that was the sort of place Gray's Club was, and the sort of antics I think that the doorman used to get up to. But getting back to my football team, I mean, you know what? I wouldn't risk Almiron tomorrow, because after training for one day, I don't think it's worthwhile, especially when you've got fortnight to rest. So I wouldn't have him in the team. I'd play Gale as a striker, because that's the only place he can play. We need goals. We need a fox in the box. We need someone who can provide him with ammunition. I do agree with Ian that I thought Joe Linton had a very, very good game. Probably the best game I'd seen him play for Newcastle in terms of attitude, in terms of willingness and fight. I thought that he gave a so-called England centre half an absolute runaround, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. And I would play Joe Linton. I'd play Willock, whether he sits as a number 10 or whether he actually sits in a midfield partnership with Hayden. And I'd play Murphy on one side and I'd play Richie on the other to provide the ammunition to get the ball into the box quickly for Gale. And my back four would be the same back four as we ended up with, which was Manquillo, Lascelles, Clark and Dummett with Dubravka in goal. That would be my formation. And if it need changing, and if we suddenly need to go, but we've still got the quality of people who can cross the ball, and Gale's not doing it, then you've got Andy Carroll who can come off the bench, preferably before the last 5 minutes. You know, preferably after 55, 60, 65, if you're not getting the run of the game that you're looking for. Prediction, I think that if you go out with the right mindset and the right attitude, and remember that you're playing a team who has won once at home all season, and I think there's at least a 2-1 win in you. That's if you play at your strength and you don't worry about the opposition and you go out there and put the fight in, I think you can go out there and you can get a 2-1 win and take the pressure off and forget about what's happening tonight in Fulham and Leeds.
Do you want to get the team talk tomorrow, Steve?
You know what? I'd happily give a team talk. And I think there are also, unfortunately, 52,000 others who could happily give a team talk equally as good as me and equally better than the team talk they're getting from Steve Bruce at the moment.
If ifs and ands were pots and pans, that's what they used to say, wasn't it? Plenty of ifs and ands in that. Ian, I know you've got to go, mate, so thanks as always for your time tonight. Great to have you on. Hopefully see you next week.
Cheers, Ian.
My pleasure. Take care, lads. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good week.
Ian, have a good weekend.
And you. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Great to have Ian on. He's off to make his lasses tea, as always. Mark Ritchie says, would anyone try Joe Linton in the 9 tomorrow with Murphy and Fraser wide? Steve?
You know what? I thought we got a shift out of him playing the way he did, and I'm thinking to myself, why should I risk him as a 9? Because he's not a 9. When we've got a guy there who is a 9, you know, just play Gale, provide him with the ammunition in the box and give him the opportunity to score. That's where I would be heading. And how many times have we played Joe Linton as a 9 and he hasn't got anywhere? So the lad is coming into some sort of form or some sort of play, and getting suited to playing on that sort of wide position on the left and moving across. No, just stick a striker in who can score goals, who knows how to play as a number 9, and that has to be Gale for me. And if it's not Gale, it has to be Andy Carroll. None of this playing false 9s, none of playing Fraser. Quite frankly, from what I've seen of Fraser, I'd rather have Richie in anyway.
Mitch, what's your take on that? Would you play Joe Linton at number 9 tomorrow?
No. You look, I've told you before, he's a false 9. So you need a formation that accommodates a false 9. If I was going to play him anyway, top of the diamond, because that is technically a false 9. If you're playing split strikers in a diamond, a la Championship Manager 99, you know, it is. If that's what you want to do with it, that's the way you should go. You're right. I mean, what I saw him in the last game is the best I've seen out of him in a long time. I hate having to go to our own players. Yeah. I really hate it. I absolutely detest it. But we're in a place where we need to be fighting for the points, and we need people who can deliver, and we've just not seen him deliver. So will I play him as a 9? No, because he hasn't delivered there.
He's going to play regardless, and he can't cross the road, says Mark Ritchie. I think you're right. I love that expression. Got some
Mark Ritchie or Matt Ritchie? I don't want to be controversial.
It was Mark. I had to double check, but it was Mark. Yeah, very good. John from QTech will put up the winners at 7:30 on his Twitter account. A few of you ask him what his Twitter account is. There it is, at QTech. So it's at Q_T_E_CH. Follow him on Twitter, and the winners of those key rings will be on there, and he will sort that out with you direct. Now it is time for our final segment. Got them all in this week. I remembered. I'm not going senile. It is Tweet of the Week. Steve Hasty combing the Twitter sphere to find the tweet of the week, and he's come up with 3 belters this week. Here we go. Here's the first one.
From the Chronicle, this one, actually. Rather than the Last Chance Saloon, well, it was actually Gibbo. Rather than the Last Chance Saloon, Steve Bruce is sitting in the execution chamber, desperately holding out for a last-minute reprieve from the governor. And I think we've all seen those films, and very rarely do those last-minute reprieves come, do they? I thought that was really good.
Gibbo's on fire this week.
Seriously, you know, what is it? You know, there's his one. Yeah, I think it was just talking about fashion last night. I think he just hit a roll, didn't he? He's had one of those weeks. Brilliant.
Well, Dodo Bird's going to hang him out to dry next week, by the sounds of it. This one was today from Chris Woff.
Yeah, it's Chris Woff, but I mean it's actually Chris Woff. And I suppose, really, we should give the credit to Steve Bruce, because it's actually Steve Bruce's press conference quotation, which actually says, Bruce on his future, that decision will always be taken out of my hands. I only want what's best for the club. Over the last few months, I haven't been good enough to get the results that this club demands, and I'll try my hardest to run it around. Turn it around. I said run it around there, and I'll never walk away. Dear me.
Because I want the combo.
The winner was this. The winner was this one.
Yeah, this one. This was an absolute classic.
Fantastic.
From Cathal Sweeney. Don't know Cathal at all, but I thought this was brilliant. I know the feeling, Nikki, as she replied to a photograph from Nikki, who said that obviously an article about magpies and about superstitions, and apparently magpies are controlling my life. And I think, you know what, there's plenty of us out there who also think that magpies are controlling their life at the minute, because it's driving us to distraction, isn't it?
It is.
Cheers, Gail.
I'll tell you what, mine lads, it was difficult. Twitter of the week was difficult this week for no other reason than most of the tweets that I saw that I laughed at the most were just so full of expletives that I just thought we kind of put them up. Because, and you know what? It's kind of summed up the feeling of angst among the fans, you know. But I just thought, you know what? I cannot put that up. I cannot use that word or those words so many times in a tweet. It just wouldn't be, you know. Not before the watershed anyway. We'll have to have a post watershed show if we're going to do that type of tweet, lads. I'm sorry.
You still had a top three, mate. That's all that matters. So, Steve, thanks very much for doing Tweet of the Week. Thanks to John from Q-Tech. Here's the winners. Keyring winners: N. McMillan, C. Dutton, P. Williams, P. Oxley, T. Hogg, J. Walker, R. Lilly, G. Coolman, Jed H. and Julie B. You've all won a keyring. So if you get onto the qtechshop.co.uk Twitter, and he will organise sending those out to you. Paul Williams says centre midfield should be Matty Longstaff and Isaac Hayden. A lot of people would agree with that. Keith just says Gibbo was on top form last night. Paul Gibson says the flares on Gibbo must still have had some 70s narcotics in his pocket. I don't think he was into narcotics, mate. He does always like a drink, though, John, and some things have never changed. I couldn't imagine John on narcotics, I've got to be honest. Maybe Xanadin or something like that, aspirin, but definitely not anything else.
We can shout as much as we like for Matty, but I don't think we'll see Matty tomorrow, to be perfectly honest.
No, Mark Ritchie says, when I said Joe Linton play 9, I didn't mean as a target man, really. I just meant get him more central facing the goal. And kicking the ball harder, maybe, as well, would be helpful. Darren Cowan says, Newcastle's like a boxer in a fight and is hanging on and just waiting for that knockout to put us down. I think it's very true. And Rob Sims says, I would just love it if he played players in their given positions and have Murphy and Fraser out wide, Carroll up top, Almiron sat behind, Shelby dropped, Willock and Hayden centre too. It's as simple as that, isn't it? It is simple as that. There's a few different combinations, but I think we're all believing in the same thing, that just stop putting square pegs in round holes, which is your favourite.
Absolutely, yeah. It's square pegs, square holes, round pegs, round holes, and the octagon. You either use them where there's an octagon, or you just keep them on the bench.
Exactly. The one thing I want to say, which we haven't talked about tonight, is that one that came up last night about Carl Darlow. Gareth Southgate, lads, more or less said that Darlow would have been picked for England if he'd been featuring more regularly. The poor bugger, Steve's just been dropped. I mean, he couldn't have played more regularly if he'd tried. Was that a bit of a fob off, do you think, from Gareth Southgate, or what? And do you think Darlow was worthy of an England call up?
You know what? His performances he put in were just as good as the West Brom lad. I'd see no reason why. I think if anything, Darlow's the one thing that went against Darlow, knowing Southgate, was his age. I think if we're going to look at it, I think it was a bit disingenuous of him to say, "Oh well, you would have been in, but for the last fortnight." Which is basically what he's saying to the lad. You've done really, really well all season, but for the last fortnight, when at the same time, he's picked a lad who hasn't played for 18 months, but because of the performances he's put in over the last fortnight, he's decided to bring him back into the England squad, which is what he's done with the lad at West Ham, who was on loan for Man United. So Southgate has his own ideas. We've seen it with the selections in the past. He hasn't chosen Alexander Arnold today. He's brought Luke Shaw back in, but he hasn't brought Wan-Bissaka. We could argue, forever and a day about England selections, but quite honestly, I don't know about you lads, but I pay absolutely no attention to England until it actually gets to the tournament. I'm not that bothered. My main interest is Newcastle United. It's not international football, I'm afraid. I enjoy the tournaments. I enjoy it. I support England when they get there. But it's not the be all and end all of my life if a Newcastle United player does or does not get into the England squad, because it means nothing to me. It's great for the player, but it's and it might be, some people might think it's a bit of kudos for the football club, but international football tends to get in the way of the domestic game, as far as I'm concerned. And if I'm perfectly honest, I don't know why we've got international games going on during this whole COVID situation.
It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely
it is
ludicrous.
Absolutely
have you seen the situation with the African nations qualifiers? Because the French teams have said you're not travelling.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're not travelling. So the African nation qualifiers, if they go ahead in the next few days, are ridiculous, because none of the top flight French internationals will be involved. They've been told they can't travel.
But if you remember it's the UEFA clubs countries that have turned around to the South Americans and said, no, you're not having our players. Yeah. They're not going to travel, but at the same time, we're going to run ours.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's a two-handedness.
I switch off when it comes to Newcastle United players getting selected for England, because historically, for me, that means they're just about to be sold. Yeah. It's like, excuse me for being a child of the 70s and growing up in the 70s and 80s, but that's what happened to our players when they got picked for England. Darlow's suffering for this for one simple reason for me. Bruce didn't take him out the team when he should have. The minute Dubravka was fit, he's been number one. He should have been straight back in. Simple. And we've talked about this. We've talked about this probably for the last 3 weeks, about Darlow's form. And to be fair, he probably overperformed as a number 2 keeper in our team. And if you compare him to the other ones that have been picked, I don't think he's any better than them. And I certainly don't think his distribution is any better than them. And I don't think his kicking's any better than them. So does he deserve to be in the squad? Don't think he does.
No,
and it feels like lip service from Southgate, who Southgate has proven time and again. He tells everybody he's going to be progressive and he's going to pick on form, but he doesn't. He picks the players he knows and he picks the players he likes. And he picks the player if he's had it under 18 and under 20 and under 21 levels. And that's what he refers to and defaults to. And that's why Alexander Arnold, who was never really on his radar, is another 21 international manager, isn't going to get picked this time when he bloody should be. How weird. The lad's one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League, and he crosses a ball better than many wingers, and he should be in the squad, and he won't be because, I don't know, Kieran Trippier is now available for selection. How weird. International football and me were never the best bedfellows anyway, because cynically, like I say, if a Newcastle player gets picked, he's about to be sold anyway. But beyond that, yeah, like Steve, I like the tournaments. I like to get involved with it. This is the absolute problem we have as Geordies. We're Geordies because we're King George's men who defend the border against the bloody Scots. And you'll never find more fervent Englishmen than Geordies. Yet we get pissed on by people in London repeatedly, and it absolutely infuriates me. So I'm quite happy to let the England selection go by the wayside, because all I care about is Newcastle United.
You say that, it means that they're going to get sold when they get picked for England. I just think they're going to get injured. I mean, you just got to remember Michael Owen. I mean, a lot of people, including me, have had what pop at Michael Owen for his, he's like Wizard of Oz type attitude, his cowardly lying kind of attitude at St James's, and he only came here for a big payday. We know that. But had he not got injured on international duty, things might have been slightly different. I mean, he did score a hat-trick, a great hat-trick, before he got injured. He scored 2 goals against the Mackhams. There's things you can remember about Michael Owen which were positive, but when he got injured on international duty, it was just typical of Newcastle's luck at that time. Spend a shitload of money on somebody, a load of wages. I think Alan Shearer it was rumoured that Alan Shearer had to be the highest paid earner at the club, and I mean, he came in and was obviously paid a king's ransom. It was supposedly 100 grand a week if the truth be told, and if it was that, wow, I mean, for all the games he played. But that's always my biggest worry, that players get injured, and that's the problem, isn't it, Steve, with international games?
Yeah, it is a problem. The Michael Owen situation at that particular time, however, was when he got injured against West Ham. Was it New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, something like that?
Mm-hmm.
His metatarsal, and what was supposed to be sort of an 8 to 9 week out. He was out all the way through until I think the last or the second last game of the season. He just didn't want to be risked because he wanted to go at the World Cup. And then, of course, he went to the World Cup and did his knee in after 20 minutes or something ridiculous like that, if I remember rightly. A stupid little twist and turn, and the knee went, and it was very, very unfortunate. But sometimes that kind of injury, and I'm sure Mitch can sort of elaborate on that type of injury, when it's done not in a physical tackle, is often because a player has sort of not been in peak physical condition, and he's been training to get a certain injury, recover from a certain injury, but it's kind of the fitness coaches and that have let loose on the other sort of aspects of the body, and he was working on the metatarsal, and the knee eventually gave way, which was unfortunate. But yeah, you're right, Steve. That whole Owen situation at that particular time was unbelievable. 110,000 £110,000 a week. Bringing in a player who obviously didn't want to be there, and the only reason he came was because of the money. That I think they had to give him that money. They had to offer him that money to come in the first place. And he still was harping on, isn't he? And you read his autobiography, and you listen to his interviews subsequent, where he does say that he was desperately thinking that it was Liverpool that were going to come in for him, and Freddie Shepherd nipped in and nabbed him before. And there was a connection, wasn't there, with Newcastle and Real Madrid at that particular time? Do you remember the connection with Adidas, and the connection with Madrid, and the way that the whole goal film that had existed? There was a lot more going on off the pitch, I think, than there was on it, that had to do with that particular deal. And I think the commercial aspect of it drove Michael to Newcastle rather than Michael wanting to come to us in the first place. I think it was very much a money-led deal at that particular time. His body language on that particular 10, 15,000 people cheering him when he arrived showed that he thought that flabbergasted at everybody wanting to be there, but it just turned sour, didn't it? I mean, it was here for 4 years, but it did turn sour, and it turned sour because of England. It turned sour because he saw England as his career ahead of his club career, in my mind, anyway.
Yeah, I love that point made by Darren. He says, how can you pick a goalkeeper that's playing for a club in the bottom three who's let 57 goals in this season?
Right, but how can Dubravka's national team pick him when he makes the most saves in the Premier League last season? It's all relative. It's all relative.
Two ways of looking at it. Everybody agrees with us. Mark Corby agrees with us on the old injury front. Like he says, Rob Lee was unreal throughout 1994, made his England debut, came back injured, and took almost a year to find the same form. Woodgate too.
Fair comment, Mark.
Steve Howie.
Yeah, he got injured as well.
Yeah. Fell into a pothole, didn't he, Steve?
Rabbit hole.
Get fit and fell into a rabbit hole or a divot hole when he was out running in between international games because he was so keen to get into that Euro 96. I think it was the Euro 96 squad, wasn't it?
He was never the same player either.
No.
After.
Mark Ritchie says, just to clarify, I'm not a Joe Linton fan, but Bruce will play him. We need to give him better supply. Personally, I'd drop Joe regardless of how supposedly well he's done lately. Carroll deserves a shot. Paul Wandless says, I'm a Newcastle fan. That's it. I admire, I respect non-league fans. Been to Gates at Hartlepool in the past when Newcastle weren't up. But he's talking a little bit about the non-league. A lot of people saying how many people are going to ditch Newcastle for non-league when we can go back. Rachel Lilly says, very happy about winning a key ring. Cheers, John. Might have to give the lottery a go this weekend. Well done, Rachel. Nice to see
Rachel.
People in the chat winning stuff. And Chris Collins says, Freddie Shepherd being asked by a couple of Scousers and Jesmond if they can have Owen back was hilarious. Yeah, I remember that. Jesmond was one of his favourite haunts, old Freddie. And Paul Gibson, best cure for mental illness or people that are down go walking. I've done my usual Whitley to North Shields, then walk back to Slatey from the Toon. Love it. Well done, Paul. And I did see your post there saying that you didn't think John was on narcotics. That's fine, mate. You think you had the odd doobie. I will ask John whether he smoked a joint in the 70s and 60s. I'm sure we'll get an honest answer from John in his own imitable way.
That's what Steve Howie pushes, isn't it? Walking. Steve Howie walks and walks and walks and walks. Yeah, and it is. It's something where during a period where everybody's been locked down, no matter where you are in the world, again, I've bored you all with it before. We had a more severe lockdown than you guys have ever had.
Yeah.
And the ability. Well, did you have to apply to the police to go and buy a loaf of bread? I did. Anyway,
you had it harsh, but Christ, you've been drinking in a pub for the last 6 months, winding us up.
Because we did that.
Yeah.
And now you're doing crazy shit because you're playing catch up, Anyway, we're not here to talk about that.
We're still locked down.
You could be like me and you could walk through Jesmond Dean, and the number of times I've seen certain reporters from the Northeast Press Corps who are also walking through Jesmond Dean thinking they're going to bump into Steve Bruce and get an exclusive is quite funny, actually. And that's no word of a lie. Because they all know lives in Jesmond, and they're all now, and they're also probably now wandering around on the top rat path at Jesmond on the other side of the water, at Jesmond Dean, thinking that they're going to pump into a certain Alan St. Maximum who lives on that side, the totally opposite side of Jesmond Dean to the manager.
But he technically should stay in his house for the next 7 days.
He should.
Hey, I just wish he would stay in the country and maybe play a few football matches for Newcastle. That would be handy.
Do you know what it is, Steve? Right? Talk about this. Let's talk about it. Let's get out there, right? Because I took a little bit of stick because I think people thought I was having a go at Alan. I'm not. You know what? We've got a player who's injured, who's unable to play for the foreseeable. It's his birthday. He wants to go home and celebrate his birthday at home. You know what? Go do it. Go do it. If that's going to bring you back happier and in a better place and all of that, but please tell the club that's what your intention is. And the club can deny it all the like. The club can tell we're all sorts of things. We know what the reality is. The club didn't know. And then you, in retrospect, when they had to fill in the elite sportsman forms to get him back in the country. It's as simple as that. They can tell where he went to get certain heart checks in his own country after COVID. When we've got an award-winning heart transplant team in the Freeman Hospital who were available via the Nuffield at the club's request. No, that doesn't sit with me at all. It doesn't sit with me as a fan. It doesn't sit with me as a medical professional at all. They didn't know he was out of the country until it was too late. He was already out of the country. And that just shows one thing, the lack of leadership, top to bottom, in our club. It's not a slight on Alan St. Maximin. He can go and do what the hell he wants. We all love him to bits. We all want him fit. We all want him on the pitch doing what we know he can do. We never thought he wasn't coming back. We knew he was going to come back. I just wish he had the right paperwork to come back easily instead of the farce that unfolded. And the club can deny it all they like. The club will deny it, and they'll tell you, and they'll tell the journalists, and they'll tell everybody else that they didn't know. That they did know. Sorry, they didn't. And I'll stand by that.
What do you think, Steve? I mean, it just seems to be constant, doesn't it, with Alan St. Maximin? Constantly in the papers for the wrong reasons, really.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon, isn't he? He's a loose cannon. The lad's injured. The lad's gone home. He's taken his family back. He's come back with his brother. He's come back with his dad. I brought him back. His brother's his agent anyway. read into it whatever you like, you know. And I'm sure that plenty of people will read probably 5 or 6 things into that. But at the end of the day, you've got to have somebody in control of your football club, somebody who knows where their star performers are, somebody who knows that there's a COVID situation out there that needs managed. Somebody who knows that the player is in France, somebody knows that the player is in Monaco, somebody knows that the player is involving himself with football clubs in France at that particular time. And yeah, give them the green light to do it. Don't hide, and don't fob what off, you know. And then don't scream at a journalist who writes the story that's the truth. You know, don't blame the journalist, you know, because that's what happens, you know. And now there's a certain journalist out there who's been getting excellent stories for the Daily Mail, and they've banned him. And every story now that he carries on getting, they're gonna try and rip apart and destroy and say that it's fabricating. He's doing it for the wrong intentions. He's not. He's doing it because A, it's true, and B, he's a fan and he wants the stories to be out there, and he wants the club to be honest, because the club weren't honest with him by throwing him out and not allowing him to enter press conferences and ask the manager what's going on. You know, there's a game of bluff and counter bluff, and then you have other journalists who call fans and rabid, and you have journalists who are frightened to ask questions, and you get journalists who are not allowed. I mean, the whole press conference situation, as Mitch pointed out earlier, you know, it's a farce. You know, it is a farce. There are sort of maybe 3 or 4 journalists who are allowed on those Zoom calls. You know, it's not like you've got the entire press pack of the Northeast with everybody from the Shields Gazette through to the Northern Echo, to the Chronicle, to the Journal, to the Telegraph, to the Mirror, the Sun, the Mail, you know, the Star. They're not all there anymore. You know, they're not all asking questions. It's literally a hand-picked sort of 3 or 4, and it's over and done with. And it's protecting the manager, but it's also putting the manager in an invidious position that is kind of undermined by what they really know that's going on. Because what they really know that's going on is not the stuff that comes out of his mouth, and not the stuff that comes out of the football club. You know, just be honest. Grow up, man up. You know, run your football club like it's supposed to be run. You know, do away with your PR. Forget your PR. It's not a PR exercise anymore. It's an exercise in something far greater than that. It's not an HR issue either. You know,
we're in a fight for survival.
Yeah.
Sod the PR. Sod the PR. We're fighting. We should be fighting. We should be showing we're fighting. We should be showing on every level we are fighting to avoid relegation. We shouldn't be trying to gloss it over and make out that something's rosy in the background, which isn't. Actually, if they showed it warts and all, it might actually encourage me. Because do you know what? If the dressing room turn around and say, sod you, we're going to do this for ourselves, we'd back them. As fans, we'd get behind the players, and we would. If there's a revolution coming where we've got your backs, lads, at the end of the day, do it for us, we'll do it for you.
Yeah, great place to finish. Sorry, Mark Corby says, you've started us off now, Steve. Chris Waddle was allegedly tapped up on international duty. I'm off for more cans. Great place to finish.
Sorry, Mark.
Going to chuck a special in, as I often do. Obviously, we've got Match Day Live tomorrow night, which is, of course, 7:30 for the Brighton. But 4 o'clock, I'm going to have Jake Burns on from Stiff Little Fingers. He's going to come on, and just before he heads out to watch the match at his chosen bar in the US, he's going to come on and do a live Q&A with the fans. So if you're a Stiff Little Fingers fan and you've got a question for Jake, whether it's about Newcastle United, his favourite memories, etc., or whether it's about music and the band, then get your thinking cap on. I will pin the post at the top of my Twitter account at Steve Wraith, and you will be able to ask your question on there. And I'm just going to check my Twitter account because the competition for the flight, which was kindly donated by Nick, is over. And let's just double check to see who the winner is. And is it gone up? I think it might have done. Let's have a look. Gary Miles, you're the winner. £150 he has paid. So well done, Gary. You have won the prize, and I'm sure Nick will be in touch via Twitter to award you that prize. Fantastic, well done. Plenty of winners tonight, and great to have so many watching again. Over 700 at one point. Wow. So always good. Never take you for granted, guys. Steve, Mitch, have a good weekend, and as I always say, don't let the football spoil it. See you next Friday, lads.
Take care.
Cheers, everyone.
Good night.
Attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way